Before you clicked on this video, what did you think of when you combined WCW and Mayhem? If you thought of the year 2000, you'd be incorrect, you bunch of plebs. It's the video game. That's what WrestleBound is about. Look, I'm not excited for this, as you can obviously tell, but I have to cover the crap games from time to time, and this is one of those times. The proper verb is force, but I'd rather not be future endeavored.
I'm not sure where else to go from here, so let's just get through this as soon as possible. WCW Mayhem was the result of World Championship Wrestling losing Aki Asmic Ace to the competition, so they had to look for another company to produce their brand of wrestling games, and they unfortunately went to EA. Sure, Electronic Arts wasn't the very worst company at the time, but they weren't in their prime either. It was released for the PS1 and Nintendo 64 in North America and Europe between August and September of 1999, and the Game Boy Color in the summer of 2000. 2 to 4 players could play depending on which version it is, and the ESRB rated the console ports T for teen, and the handheld port got an E for everyone, which is commonplace for this sort of thing. The box art for Mayhem doesn't convey much. Or maybe it does, and the title is deceiving. Our main man, Bill Goldberg, seems to be screaming the logo from his soul, and it's pretty much the same on the cartridges. No matter which version you play, you'll always see Goldberg, Goldberg, Goldberg. Now the back has a whole collage of pictures and short text that describes all that you'll see and get. No long-form text, because WCW knew its fans couldn't read.
But that doesn't matter in the long run, because we just need to simulate the wrestling, which is what we'll do with all 3 versions. And we'll do this differently and get this junk out of the way.
If you've been watching this series since its inception, you'll know that wrestling games on the Game Boy aren't anything to write home about, especially compared to their console counterparts.
It's been evolved on since, but cash grabs in video games isn't anything new. And EA doing it isn't new either.
Obvious to say, I wasn't expecting much, so I just quickly went into a 1v CPU and chose Goldberg to steamroll Kevin Nash quickly.
So long as no cattle prod is in sight, we have this in the bag.
But I got the surprise of a lifetime when I saw how the game looked.
Now that looks familiar to me, but I don't know why. Oh, no wonder why it took me a second to recognize. This has the same look as Betrayal that Brian took from me.
I didn't know another game used this engine before Way Forward, so this is shocking to me. But I could care less right now because as opposed to Betrayal, this actually plays like a wrestling game. Sure, it isn't much with the D-pad and 2 buttons, but it's easy to figure out, and there's more to it as you can go outside of the ring and brawl in the locker room area.
Oh, who is that supposed to be? Luther if he was built?
It took a while, but I won my first bout, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I had a little bit of fun with this.
But don't worry, I found a way to ruin it for me.
First, I found out the quest for the best mode was a bracket tournament, so that's strike 1. I found out the best way to drain an opponent's health is to tie them up by the collar and elbow and mash the buttons, that's strike 2. And the fact Goldberg says this...
Strike 3! That's 3 count in a nutshell. It had a glimmer of light, but that quickly went away, and I should have expected it when it gives you a crazy introduction to diminishing returns. Cause some mayhem! Disappointing! Okay, let's look at the credits and see who I'm putting on my hit list. Sending Dino Bravo after them.
I'm feeling a little better now that we got the handheld port out of the way. Now we can start looking at the console ports and not look forward to looking at a crappy Game Boy version later.
But after seeing how this looked and played, I'm trying to be a little optimistic as it may not be as bad as I think it's gonna be. But it's larger than it should be, 22 pages on my save pack? There's a reason why I record these, cause that's crazy.
Let's quick start this shit so we can look at the roster, which has a decent selection of stars and multiple factions, though I presume a good few of them are locked off. But we still have DDP!
Got your train!
Yeah, it's my two men, Randy Savage. Who's better than Canyon?
Buckle up, knuckle up!
Here comes Mungo.
And that guy from Harlem. He was always in heat. There's a few things that surprised me when looking through the list, like I didn't know Kevin Nash was once billed from my home state, or that Disco Inferno was in the Wolfpack at some point, but I'm picking Goldberg because that's why.
And this mode doesn't allow me to pick an opponent, so fuck me too, I suppose.
We're at Bash at the Beach, and the entrances are okay, though a little bit clunky. The camera angles are weird, and it seems like they get cut off mid-pose.
My opponent is Hulk Hogan? Sweet. And we're on a pay-per-view as it should have been.
Hopefully we can right this wrong if the game wants to cooperate. The basic controls are basic enough, but I still find it weird to default to the D-pad to move as I'm not prepared to hold the controller like this today. What you have to do is beat your opponent up to build up your meter while weakening his, which is easier said than done as it can turn on a dime with even the simplest of moves.
A run-in? That's no surprise, as Hogan could never win without help in WCW, and it's Eric Bischoff, the head honcho. Could be worse. Could be Shane O'Mac.
I say that because though Shane throws the worst worked punches, Bischoff's chops are real and very annoying here. It basically turned into a 2-on-1 affair, and not a moment would go by without me getting knocked down over and over again. It slowly turned into a bore, and I'd lose 8 agonizing minutes later.
Well, now I'm pissed and want revenge. Too bad we're not playing that better game, but let's get vengeance back in a proper handicap match.
Bischoff isn't available, so Hogan brought Scott Steiner to have 66 2/3 chance of winning, which was what happened, as being the one on the 2-on-1 is never fun in a wrestling game, but I did learn that when you grapple your opponent with a full meter, you use the control stick to do your finisher, and hold L when he's down to pin.
The most important controls of any wrestling game. You're welcome, you ungrateful geeks.
Other matches are your normal stuff like triple threats and fatal four-ways, or triangle and four-way nans, cause copyright and shit. Cease and desist.
I tried a battle royal, and the funniest thing I did was eliminate myself by simply walking out of the ring. Does the top rope mean anything in the South, or is this a Vince Russo idea?
Other things I've noticed is the pyro clipping behind and not in front of stars making their entrance, and I swear to God, some moves should connect, but they don't.
And after playing it for a while more, I'm sorry to say, but this game isn't doing much for me, and I'm starting to get bored. That's how this week's Raw was for me too.
So let's just look at what the game has left. Main event is how you configure other match types. Quest for the best is another bracket tourney, but more defined to where you go for all the titles. But I don't got time for the TV title.
That's obsolete anyway. It's all about the Internet Championship, baby.
Pay-per-view password is where you can enter codes from the EA and WCW websites.
I tried looking them up, but EA had nothing, and the WCW link sent me to an article on why EA's the worst. Global options? Are we connecting to the internet? No. It's just sound adjustments. Why is it called global options? Universal is the better word to use. Copyright again?
Now it's time to create a wrestler, and I almost didn't want to do me after looking at these templates.
A wasp, here's one for the furries. RoboCop. Diablo, do we have fans at EA? A hillbilly? Oh man, they knew their audience.
Anyway, I did my best to replicate my awesomeness, but there weren't enough options to do it exactly. So I got this close, and what I was primarily missing was my hat.
Now that's just wrong, as you can see. Without the hat, I'm not complete. But with the hat, you have the total package.
I booked myself in the main event of Starrcade because that's exactly what you virgins would do, and faced off against Tough Stuff Buff, but even still, it was not enough to get me back into it, if I was ever into it in the first place.
I've never felt more conflicting feelings when playing a wrestling game. While the controls are fine, I'm not getting a whole lot of enjoyment out of it. But we still have one port to go, and maybe it'll change my mind.
I gotta learn not to put off the PS1 ports when they come up, cause they more often than not have a goofy FMV at the beginning, and this sure had one, with WCW's power plant basically creating Goldberg out of the metaverse, followed by footage of the product.
Goldberg is your basic cock come to life, so I can accept this reality. What I can never accept is the loading times. Cartridge versus the disc. The war rages on.
The face of Mayhem apparently will take on Mr. Perfect. I even changed the match setting so we can go outside of the ring and fight in the back, and though it may look a little better, as weird as that may sound, it's still the same game with a different controller. The controls are still good, and I even won a few matches, a stark contrast to what I was able to do on the N64. Winning by submission was something too, imitating Bret Hart and Hennigs's SummerSlam encounter.
While I'm thinking about it, why not face Bret Hart one more time? I can think of a number of reasons, this game being middling is one of them. But I need to do one more thing before we move on. Yeah, concussed! That's real mayhem. I'm actually feeling bad that I did that. Sorry, Hitman.
Mayhem for its day got an above average response from the critical masses, which I guess is fair considering it went up against the dog shit in WWF Attitude and WrestleMania 2000. So yeah, it can sit comfortably in the middle. A few months later, WCW would use the title of the game as a pay-per-view, replacing World War III, and not a moment too soon. It ran for 2 years and is best known for a whole lot of nothing. Nobody talks about these shows at all. If that's warranted will be up for you to determine, but one match is referenced in the intro to Malcolm in the Middle, so at least somebody in Hollywood watched and cared. EA cared enough to make another game, which I'm not going to talk about or hope to talk about after this brief mention ever again.
As I said before, I was not looking forward to covering this game. It was WCW in the beginning of its dying days, and EA before we knew how awful they were. And even with all that, they still delivered this meh game. Not real good or terribly bad. Just meh.
I mean, it's slightly better than what I thought it would be, but it still didn't hook me like I figured. Though it still gave me a few good surprises. On the Game Boy Color, knowing it's in a similar vein to WWF Betrayal is silly to me, and this came out first. So it's funny to know that it had potential, but Way Forward took the engine in another direction. Both console ports on the PS1 and N64 are just okay. Controls are serviceable and presentation is fine, all things considered, but it's far away from being perfect, and its allusion to Mayhem is really misleading. So Mayhem is a thing, was a thing, That's all you need to know. Knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe, real American hero, yada yada yada.
2.5 stars for the console ports, and 2 stars for the handheld. 'Cause why not? Yeah?
Alex, we have a problem here.
Jacob, have you been reading the comments again? It's just allegations at this point.
It's worse, Alex. Somebody on this channel has launched a complaint against you and is wanting me to act.
What? Oh, come on. Who's the pussy that did it?
I can't tell you. Out of fear, you'll harm them even more.
You're damn right. Where's Cody?
That can wait. Look, I'm sorry, Alex, but you forced my hand. You're gonna have to play it now.
No. No, you don't mean...
Yeah. Backstage assault.
Oh my god! Why? Oh, why? Why do my brothers have to be such wimps? Damn you, Cody! Damn you!